it's becoming clearer and clearer now that Arizona, especially, possibly Georgia, and possibly North Carolina are moving toward Trump. He's starting to take the lead in them as opposed to being within one or within two or tied. He's starting to show a lead there. And he's starting just recently to show a lead in Pennsylvania. This is not really reflected in Nate Silver's odds and chances yet. I don't know what goes on with that model. I have no idea. I have noticed in terms of the campaign Trump has been running, great to see him in Michigan tonight. Great to see him in these Rust Belt states. Great to see him today down in Valdosta or whatever it is. Hurricane relief. He looked like a president. He had the podium looking exactly like the presidential podium without the seal. Franklin Graham behind him, who's looking every day. Franklin Graham looks more and more like Billy Graham. Great optics. He's had a great few days. I pray that he's being protected well, and he's kind of doing more town hall stuff. He's got the working class message going. And I continue to say the reason why he's doing better in Pennsylvania is white men moving away from Harris. That's the reason. That's his bread and butter. He needs those voters, the white men. And we hear so much about Hispanics and African, and that's all great. There is a bigger group he needs to be concerned about, the white working class male. I read an article today, and I'm not going to go through it because it's very academic and very, people be bored by it, but maybe I'll do a whole video on it some other time. But the article is called The Missing White Voter or something like that. It was written in 2012 after the Romney loss. In 2012, there was a whole post-mortem done about the Romney loss. There seemed to be this conventional wisdom that the reason he lost was because he couldn't get his numbers to where they needed to be with Hispanics. And they were saying, well, if he can get the Hispanic numbers up, he could have won Nevada, he could have won Florida. But what they missed, and what this article talks about, the missing white voter in 2012. Yes, the share of white voters of the electorate went down because Obama kept up his pace and even grew it a little bit with African Americans and minorities. So it kind of, because those numbers increased, that made the white percentage shrink. But the actual raw number of white voters also went down. If you go back and look at that election, the turnout was way down in that election. 9 million white voters, likely voters who didn't vote in 2012, they just sat it out. So they said, look, we don't like Obama. We don't like what's happening with the economy, but we're not voting for Mitt Romney. He's like this hedge fund guy, Bain Capital. No, I'm not voting for him. They just sat out. In 2016, they came back. Where were these white voters? They were in Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Florida to an extent. They were in these states where Romney lost to Obama, and that's how Trump flipped them. They were in rural areas. They weren't necessarily in the inner city or in the metros. They were in the rural areas. Trump ramped up his margin. He ran up the score in the rural areas. And that's what got him the win, the narrow win in all of these states. So the article, it's really interesting. It's crazy reading it because there's just no mention of Trump. You know, every political article you read now, Trump is in it. He's not in this one because it was written like right after the 2012 election. But it's interesting because I do believe, and I keep trying to hammer this home, that is the reason why Trump was successful in 2016. If he is to be successful, he needs to start doing well. And it looks like Pennsylvania, that's starting to happen. It looks like a lot of these white working class voters are coming back home to Trump when they may have voted for Biden last time around. They may have sat out last time around. That coupled with Trump's unprecedented success with young African-American men and Hispanics. I mean, his numbers with Hispanics are incredible, even if they're not 50%, 45%, 47%, 48%. That has to have an effect.